So this is Unit 1, Module 2, Lesson 3, Scenes. This is going to be the starting point for your major project for this section. We're going to be combining the scenes and the conversations and putting all those things together in order to do a major project. So in this experiment, what you're going to do is create some different backdrops and have your character walk across the screen and have that backdrop change when your character gets to the other end. And it looks like this. So we can see the cat is walking across the screen, and as the cat walks across the screen, you get a backdrop change. So let's take a look at how to do that. So when the space key is pressed, or you can have it on any action, you want to be able to have the ability to make it stop. So I put that in there so it'll repeat until it stops. You could use the repeat forever, but I find repeat forever means you're kind of just a little lazy, coding-wise. Give it some thought. Make a decision of how you're going to allow the user to stop the program. And that should show up somewhere in your direction. So mine is based upon a space bar pressed. Then we're going to use a conditional. This is the first look at a conditional. A conditional block is in the control block, just where we've looked at our loops before. This right here is a condition, touching edge. So we're testing to see if we are touching the edge of the screen. Scratch actually knows where the edge of the screen is. If it's touching the edge of the screen, we're going to go to -179, -30, switch the backdrop to next backdrop. So essentially, it drags it back to the very beginning of the screen. And it's going to happen so fast that the user won't notice that movement. It's at one end, then jumps to the other end. If it's not touching the edge of the screen, then we're just going to switch the costume and move 10 steps. So the switching the costume is the animation part where we have the feet moving. So you would add in your animation, just like we did before, that gives some type of motion to your character to make it look like they're moving. 10 steps is a reasonable number in terms of the animation. One step is not. If you do one step, it's going to look like your character's kind of running in place. You might have to play with that number somewhere between 10 and 20 steps, depending on what your animation is on your character. You could also put a weight in here to slow it down if you think it needs to go a little bit slower. So this is essentially the code that's going to make all of this work. So you're going to start by looking at these commands, the looks for the switch to the backdrop, and then when the backdrop switches, we can make some type of effect occur. So maybe you have the costume change on the cat, or maybe you have a sound that plays, or something. So you can actually have control of what additional things might happen when that background changes. Maybe when the background changes, you're moving on to level 2 and there's different characters. Maybe when the background changes, you broadcast a message. So you can start linking pieces of your code together by different events that occur in the script. So I want to show you where in the code to find some of these things and how to actually create an if statement. So I'm going to jump into my code, click See Inside, and hit Stop. So in the control, this is where the if statement is. There's a couple other if statements in here, and a couple other things that take similar blocks. These diamond-shaped blocks are the conditions. So in here, we have to go in and find the diamond-shaped blocks, and here they are. These are our 3 comparisons that we have. We can compare 2 things and see if they're less than, compare 2 things to see if they have the same value, compare 2 things and see if they are greater than. We can also combine comparisons and make 2 conditions that have to be true. 2 things have to be true, or an or, one or the other. We can also use a not, which means it's not this. When we're not touching the edge, maybe we want something to happen. We can also join in commands, join in strings, a couple other things that we can do here. It gets particular letters of words, finds the lengths of words. Modular arithmetic is always fun to play with, and then rounding math and square roots and some other math functions are included down here. But really, what we're looking at here is the condition. So anything that's a diamond shape is going to fit into this box. So I'm going to drag my diamond and place it in the box. Then I'm going to check to see if it's touching the edge by sensing. So interesting enough, this has the ability to sense its environment. And this is important because suppose you want your character to be able to go more than one direction. Right now it only goes to one side, moving to the right. But if you want to add it some control where you can use the mouse and move your character back and forth, you have to be able to sense more than one thing. More than just touching the edge. We could check to see if it's touching a particular color, or to see if a particular color is touching another color. We could also measure distances and a couple other things in here. We can also check, of course, to see if a key is pressed. So that's that other condition that's in there. So when we click on here and drag this is touching, the options that we have to choose from, if I can click on it, there we go, the mouse pointer or the edge. So if the character is touching the mouse pointer, we could get some interesting things to happen. A little different than a click, right? So your goal is to design very basic level, would be several scenes. So if we look at the backdrop, we have a couple different backdrops put in there. I got 3. I put this red edge in there just to denote that that's the first backdrop, but it's also good if you want to change direction. By putting in some type of border, you can test to see if it's touching that color. So if we're using that color there, I would go back to my script and I could check to see if the cat is touching that color. So instead of using that feature, I would use that. And what's interesting is if you click on the color, you can actually then go through and sample the color right from the backdrop. See as it's changing the color as it moves around? So you can actually get the exact color just by clicking on there, and it looks like there's my red. So I can now check to see if the cat is touching that red color and make it reverse maybe switch the backdrop, go backwards through the backdrops, go to the previous backdrop. So there's an example where you can kind of really make a scrolling, or at least have the beginnings of a scrolling game that allows you to go from left to right and then from right to left and have different backdrops change. Very beginning basics of that. We're not going to do a game yet. We're not to that point. Our first major project is more of just a story. You can make it interactive if you choose to, but the idea when we get to that main project will be to have a story play out in front of the audience and different scenes change as you go through. And that's going to be our major project. So that's about it. What I want you to do is go ahead and get started. The studio link is right here. So you click on the studio link. If you need to go back to some of the notes, those are listed there. And of course, as always, you are to submit your project here. Please make sure you share it before you start anything. And when you're done, you can add it to the studio if you choose. So that's it for the lesson. See you soon.